Hey guys, this is Gerry O playing for Kids First. Today we're at, kind of a screening for Mr. Peabody and Sherman. It's a very exciting day. They're showing a couple of clips they finished of the new movie that's coming out March 7, 2014. It's very exciting. It's based off a very, very old TV show, old TV clips, and now it's turning into a 90-minute movie, as you can see here. There's going to be a lot of cool things. We're going to be doing Q&As, and it's just going to be a lot of fun. Stay tuned.
But let me ask you this, Rob, because again, just getting back to the original segments, I mean, you really want to give this kind of an emotional undercurrent, and I can't help but notice we've got to be leading somewhere because Sherman calls his dad Mr. Peabody instead of Dad.
Yes, that's very prescient of me. Spotted that. Yeah, I mean, we're sort of thinking into the characters. You know, the shorts don't really deal with their emotional life per se, but they must have one. You know, they're characters that I believe in and I, sort of feel like I know. And so we just simply asked ourselves the question, what would it be like for Mr. Peabody to adopt a boy in the world of today? And what would it be like for Sherman to have to deal with that? And so there's lots of issues that, that make it sort of more interesting, I think, from this perspective than it was even at the time.
I think there's also some, that's a big part of what we're, after, in terms of the arc of the whole thing, is that Mr. Peabody is a formality, and Peabody really comes to he has his weaknesses as perfect as Peabody is. His weaknesses are the irrational. I like that scene with the Mona Lisa because it exposes him trying to basically analyze comedy, which can't be analyzed. And, him also trying to be a good dad and trying to sort of, I think, at a certain point try to overcome his overthinking and actually just be a good dad and be able to, he realizes that he actually loves his son, he's not just his protege. So that part of the Mr. Peabody thing is, I think, a cool part of the arc because that sort of shifts as the film goes on too.
But it feels like an enormous burden because, as I was saying at the start, these J. Ward cartoons are so influential in so many other things, and you've got to sort of try to pay homage to that, but at the same time make it its own thing, don't you? Yeah,
well, I think that, absolutely. I mean, I think everybody who worked on the movie was a fan. And so we all cared, I think, very deeply about, sort of doing justice to it.
Is that part of your casting in terms of putting the team together, getting people who knew the material?
You don't. I mean, in the animation community, I think everybody, loves J. Ward, loves his work, loves Rocky Bullwinkle, loves Peabody and Sherman. So it's sort of part of everybody's DNA. And I think that was really how we came at it. It wasn't really, I don't think we were necessarily being too objective about it. I think it was a very subjective thing because we all felt like we knew those characters and we grew up with them. And so we were just trying to portray them the way we understood them.
But again, because so many people do, like you mentioned, in the animation community, the other people too, know them, love them, even caught up with them on home video, there has to be a kind of a pressure to sort of live up to that while creating your own thing.
Absolutely. I mean, we actually put a very interesting piece of film together to deal with that because we knew that we were going to be changing the characters. They were going to be three-dimensional. They were going to be voiced by different actors. So what we did was we actually started with the original show. And we see a clip of the original show of Mr. Peabody showing Sherman the Wayback Machine. And then we pull back from the screen and we reveal that Sherman is actually watching, our Sherman is watching the cartoon. And he looks at the cartoon and he goes, "Who are they, Mr. Peabody? They look familiar." And then our Mr. Peabody says, "That's us from 1959. And so to actually put them into the same world, to allow them to exist together, was sort of, to me, what we were shooting for. We wanted to do something that they could be just two different sides of the same coin.
A question?
Yeah. I know that you guys, obviously, with the Wayback Machine, you're playing with technology, but you have modern technology. You have a cell phone in this version. How much did the technology that we actually have in use today factor into Mr. Peabody and Sherman's characters?
Well, since we don't yet have time travel, it's hard to say. I think that obviously would be the biggest technology.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, I think, obviously there's a tremendous amount of technology just in the making of this movie. It was funny, I mean, years and years ago, when I started in animation, we always used to joke that making movies or making animation wasn't rocket science, but with computer animation, it is rocket science and beyond. The amount of technology that goes into just making the movie is pretty mind-boggling.
This is a question for Ty. What was the hardest part about recording Mr. Peabody's voice?
About recording his voice?
Yeah, like...
It was, the hardest part about recording Peabody's voice was first finding it, you know, trying to actually figure out what it was going to be. And then some of it is the words. He uses some incredibly long, complicated words that I don't normally use. I would say actually the biggest challenge is performing, you know, you're performing sort of on your own a little bit. Rob and Alex, who's here, are in the room, and we're talking about stuff as we go. But we're not, you know, I'm not there. None of the actors that, you know, that you saw in this are with their scene partners as we're recording. So it's kind of an interesting process of essentially doing just your point of view, which I love. No, I'm just kidding. But you're not necessarily, you know, feeding off of somebody else's energy. So a little bit you're flying blind, so to speak. But luckily, this is kind of my, other than some TV stuff, it was, in terms of animation, my first time. But luckily I was, you're putting yourself in the hands of other people, and I was in very good hands.
Thank you.
It's a great thing that whenever he's spotting up a bunch of facts, he sort of speeds up a little bit as if, yes, I know this. Let me just get it out of the way.
Yeah, that's also me running out of breath.
Question, yeah.
I was curious when you were putting together this film for the first time, if you kind of have to straddle a line between putting together a Peabody and Sherman movie for an audience that already knows them, and also at the same time introducing them to people who might not be so aware of them.
Yeah, absolutely. That's sort of been something we've had to deal with throughout the whole process. I would say many times, you know, I would make the error of assuming people would know more than they sometimes did. And so a lot of times we would have to go back to make sure that things were clear enough. But, you know, absolutely, I think we want it to stand on its own so that people can be introduced to the characters for the first time. But we want, obviously, it has to feel right to the people that do know and love it. But what amazed me is the few times that I've kind of pitched this idea to kids who have heard none of it. I mean, they do not know Mr. Peabody and Sherman at all. And the minute that they hear that the dog adopts the boy, it sort of blows their mind. They love it. They're like, wow, that sounds so cool. So just that idea is so strong. It's such an iconic thing that I think that it works for those people who maybe never heard of it before.
Another question? Oh, right here.
Hi. I'd like to know, I have two questions actually. One is about, there was a lot of research about the historical periods they go to, and also about the visual choices, like what visually did you aim for?
Is that history true, or did you make it up?
It is all true. Well, you know, obviously you have to know what, first of all, the real story before you have fun with it, but obviously our point was to have fun with the facts. So yes, a lot of research was done about what those particular eras and stories had to say, but then a lot of sort of creative imagining went into it as well.
Tim, I just wanted to ask you too, because how long has this project been pitched around? Because obviously you were waiting for the right creative partners to do this with, Mark.
Well, yes, there had been interest in Sherman Peabody before, actually an option with a different studio, but they didn't have the right perception. And then Rob came to me in what we decided 2003, and he got it. He understood the concept. So we've been working on it 10 years. And the story, from the original pitch Rob gave me, the story has changed incredibly over the period of time. It's very hard to take a 5-minute segment and make it into a 19-minute movie. So, you know, there were fits and starts to make sure it flowed and told the story well.
See, that interests me too, because each of these pieces feel like that they serve both those masters, that they are both segments, they have their own piece of story and like a humorous content, but they're also furthering this, so it's both kind of anecdotal and narrative. Was that your intent?
Yeah, that was absolutely. I think early on we sort of just had an idea that we wanted to visit a number of different historical periods. but at the same time, we had to make sure that we were telling a feature-length story. So that has been, I would say, the biggest challenge that we've had. We explored the possibility of just going to one historical episode and just doing the entire film set in that time, and it just didn't quite feel like it was enough to do that. And so we settled on the idea, but we needed to really make sure that it sort of told a coherent, unified story.
It also feels too like it's about by moving through time. Interestingly, you're also like furthering this kind of maturation process. So you're kind of also playing with time in both emotional terms and in chronological terms.
Yes, that was actually a very important idea, which was that, you know, time is something that we experience, we all experience, and we go through our lives, you know, with the people we love through time. And so, in a way, we're all time travelers.
How did you decide on the look of the Wayback Machine?
The look of well, it was actually form and function. The idea in the original show, or what it was the Wayback was a door. It was a giant computer.
Just dials and knobs.
It was just dials and knobs on the computer, and then there was a door that they would walk through to get to that other place. And for a number of reasons, we decided that we wanted to be able to travel, you know, in the Wayback. And this was really for storytelling purposes. So we wanted to be able to take the time between historical episodes, rather than literally just walking from one into another. And so that's where we came up with the idea of the Wayback being more of a craft.
And we're out of time, so let's thank Ty and Rob and Tiffany.